Hello again, Taylor County. I'm Alex Renner with Unleashed Tiger, and we're here for part 2 with Kendra Fershee. Kendra, thanks again for sticking around.
My pleasure.
Great. Let's just start right off. It's clear, and we were talking a little bit earlier about it, but at least from as we polled our viewers, and we got lots of feedback about all the offices, and certainly about your office as well. And it's clear that people are having they're just continuing to lose confidence in not just the leadership, but the government as a whole. And one of the primary reasons we keep seeing is, and I'm going to go on a little bit of a diatribe for a second.
That's okay.
This is your video, but it is the partisan stuff. It's the partisan bickering and all of that. And I liken it to my experience when I was in Iraq, and you had for years the Sunnis were in power, right, of the Muslim sect, and then when the Shias became power, then they just rubbed the Sunnis' nose in it, and that's happened. You look historically, and it happens with any tribe or individual or people, or individual communities where power and we're seeing that in Washington and at that state level. And it just is so distasteful because what happens is, at least from the perspective of those, and I share it to be quite honest, that people get lost in the middle of it. The actual community that you're serving gets lost in the partisan bickering, and it's really frustrating from this seat and from the seats at home. So I guess I would ask is how are you planning to, if you are, helping to address those underlying structures or the perceptions? Maybe we're seeing it all wrong, I don't know. But how are you going to add to the solution versus be part of the problem?
Well, I think one of the things we're going to see in this election is a real change in terms of a move toward brand new representatives. I think we're going to see a move away from, there is a very strong, as far as I can tell, feeling of throw the bums out, for exactly the reason that you're stating. And when a whole new group of people go to Congress, and one of the other speculations is that there are going to be a lot of women there. Well, day one, we can get those brand new women into a room and say, hey, we're all here for the same reason, right? We got sick of what we were seeing. We knew there needed to be change, so we're going to work together, and we're going to see what we can do for our constituents. What I say to people, because I teach law, I work with the Constitution a lot, I read the Constitution a lot, and I think we've gotten farther away from our constitutional principles, which are that our job as a representative government is to listen to our constituents and take their concerns with us to Washington. It's not to fight with each other. That's not the point. And we might have differing opinions on how to fix problems, but it doesn't mean that we need to fight. What I have said is you, meaning we, all of us, control the government with our voices and our votes. We tell them what to do, and that's what the Constitution says. And the farther we get from that, the worse off we are, where people this corporate PAC money is a great example. When you're getting so much money from, could be 10 people around the country who have nothing to do with your state, but they want you to vote a particular way, they don't care about anything that's going on in West Virginia. They just want that vote, whatever it is. So when we send people to Congress who get huge corporate PAC dollars, they're not going to listen to what we say. They're going to listen to those 10 people who have funded that campaign and sent them there. And so they can just go and fight it out with whomever and not listen to a thing we're saying and not serve this district. And that's wrong. So I don't take corporate PAC money.
And that was not how this system was designed.
That's exactly right.
It makes my blood boil a little bit.
That's not what our founders intended.
It's true. So in addition to all the questions we got from folks at home, we did ask the candidates, yourself and Mr. McKinley, to come up with a question that I would ask to both of you. Now he hasn't responded. He failed to respond. So I do have your question, though. So your question was, will you debate your opponent?
Yes. Obviously, it's my question, so I'm going to ask one that, and I knew the answer, what his answer would be, which is he is unwilling to debate me. We have tried to get him to agree to debate somewhere in the district so that his voters and my voters and all of his constituents and my potential constituents can hear what we think and hear what our values are and what our plans are. And it just absolutely frustrates me that someone who is asking for the votes of thousands and thousands of people, tens of thousands of people in this district, will not stand up in front of them and talk about important issues. I just think that's really dismissive, and it frustrates me.
Yeah. Hopefully, again, he hadn't responded, so I'm not sure we'll be able to get him on here either. But one of the other questions kind of that folks brought out is there's a lot of discussion, and you mentioned it earlier, and I think it has its place to bringing businesses in, bringing economy into West Virginia, because we have lost a ton. So it'd be foolish for us to say we can blow the balloon back up with our own air. We need some new life. That said, there's also, I think, a yearning, at least here, for growing our own.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, just pun intended, but you mentioned the marijuana industry and those things.
Yeah.
But really growing our own businesses here and having the context is such where it is a healthy environment to grow our own businesses. And really, I just want to have your perspective on that. Obviously attracting folks in, but what are you planning to do in your role, if you're to win, to help us grow our own and create a new culture of entrepreneurialism here?
One of the things that I think we need to do in West Virginia is focus a lot more on small business. I think one of the things we talk about, the Chamber of Commerce talks about being business friendly. We're pro business. We got all these tax breaks, but what we're doing is we're picking winners and losers over and over again. Our legislature and Congress will decide which industry gets supported in West Virginia, which has pigeonholed us into a very narrow economic base. We need to obviously broaden that. One example, we have such great need in certain parts of this district where there are actually tourists coming. Tucker County is a good example, Davis and Thomas and Canaan Valley. There are businesses there who cannot get their plumbing fixed. They can't get their electrical fixed. They can't get the HVAC fixed. We need voc ed programs in high school so that students are ready to go out into the world and make money, because there's money to be made. And the stronger we get, the stronger our communities get, the more need there will be in those skills trades. The other thing that we need to do is expand our agricultural roots. The flag of West Virginia has a coal miner and a farmer on it. And we've gotten farther and farther away from that farming history, and I think that's a great way to plug back into our legacy and make sure that we are, self-sufficient in West Virginia using this land that we have for what can be grown on it, which is actually kind of a lot. Apparently, I understand that our soil and our land is very good for a lot of different things, including cannabis. And there was some attempt at it, and maybe needs to be tried again. Lavender is supposed to grow well here.
I think I read this. It's about the climate too for both.
Yeah,
of those
the climate and soil, climate, and reclaimed lands that are with mines that are no longer in use. That's a really good use of that space. It brings in revenue, and and people have talent in that regard, and they can make some money there.
Well, what we're hearing from folks at home, and there's a sentiment that kind of becomes pretty clear, is it seems like the legalization of marijuana and certainly hemp is a different ballgame, but still, but that's coming, right? It's inevitable. Almost. It feels like an inevitability, at least from the and that had talk about a tipping point. That was not that case not too long ago.
Exactly.
Boom,
the
tipping point seems there.
That's right.
And so there's some sentiment from, and it's a negative angle, but it's actually you see it. It's almost like West Virginia is going to wait until everybody else does it, and then it's not going to be valuable for us anymore. Whereas if we got on now, it would be extremely valuable, and we'd be able to be a first mover in our region and really be able to take advantage.
We tend to be a late adopter, and we need to be an early adopter. And it maybe it's hemp, maybe it's medical cannabis, maybe it's something else, but we have got to stop. And this is my point about picking winners and losers. We tend to just keep hitting our head against the wall and expecting a different result, and that is literally the definition of insanity. So instead of doing the same thing and doubling down on that, which is what my students do oftentimes when they're not getting the results they want, they just kind of do more of the thing that's not working. We need to try new things. We need to be brave. I talk a lot about values, and I talk a lot about freedom, and freedom is getting farther and farther from us in West Virginia. The more we lose people, the more people who are struggling with their health, the more our education system struggles. Freedom is something that requires a strong community. And you can only live free if you're healthy and you're educated and you have an ability to go to work on a road that'll get you there. We need to get back to our freedom.
Yeah, and freedom, because there's so many issues that are there at a national level that we struggle about our overall freedom. When you look at the national debt, which I think is a huge risk for us right now in terms of our freedom if we aren't financially strong.
That's right.
Healthcare is another thing. There's so many issues we could talk about, but I do want to dial in on one issue that's really, I think, near and dear to many people, many of the folks in our area's hearts, is, so we just lost a hero. a friend, Command Sergeant Major Tim Bolliard, affectionately known as Caveman around here, right? He was casualty in Afghanistan. And when we see those things, this community lifts that up, right?
Yeah.
We recognize what service is all about, and we honor it. But at the same time, I think there's a question in all of our minds, what in the world are we doing in some of these things? When does it end? How does it end? How are we going to solve things? Where are we at on that? And so I guess just a question to you, and it's more general than specific, but how do you feel about some of the conflicts we have going on today, and what are we going to do? What is your position for how we should handle that, how we should exit?
Yeah. I mean, this is a hard thing that I think a lot of us are really worried about. And I think the way to do it to solve a lot of conflict is coming at the problem with a different attitude and a different sort of basis for problem solving. And I am really, I'm actually very, very optimistic. I mean, maybe it's one of those things people kind of chuckle, but when you're 50th, we have literally all of the potential, right? Mm-hmm. There's nowhere to go but up.
Yeah.
And West Virginia, in my eyes, I mean, people know I wasn't born here, but I got here as quick as I could. I can't believe what people are missing out on when they have such bad attitudes about West Virginia outside of the state. It's unbelievable to me how misunderstood West Virginia is. There's no reason why we can't be the hub of everything good that's going on, at least on the East Coast, which is, by the way, where 80% of the country lives. You know, people get in the airplanes, they fly over West Virginia to go to Colorado to do all the things that you can do here. We are the economy, we have an economy that's struggling, but we have music, we have culture, we have beauty, we have resources, we have people. And that's the biggest and most important part about West Virginia, is that this literally is the hardest working state in the nation. And it's been working its tail to the bone, its fingers to the bone, without any credit, without asking for anything in return, and for little pay and no health care. And that's got to change, or else people are going to continue on this path that we're on. And look, I don't know what it looks like for a state to collapse, but I'm worried we're going to find out.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about some of those opportunities, and I want to get back to that. But real quick, I want to make sure that people know how to get a hold of you, because there are so many issues. We'd be here for days on camera, right?
Yeah,
but people may be interested about a certain issue, how you feel about it, what your perspective is. How do they get in contact with you to be able to communicate that more?
So I have a couple of ways. I have a website, of course, because it's modern times, and I'm running for office, which is www.teamkendra.com. TeamKendraWV.com, TeamKendrawV.com, or you can send an email to team@teamkendrawv.com.
Great. And is there anything that, again, we couldn't cover them all, is there any issues that you'd like to discuss now before we kind of close this out?
Well, I think one of the things that we need to be talking, unfortunately, when we have so many big problems, I do feel like education gets a little buried, and people don't know necessarily what the federal government has to do with public education. So two things I'll say. One, the federal government is the largest funder of public education in West Virginia. Most of our funding comes from the federal government. And right now, this is the second point, right now the person who's in charge of our public education system, Betsy DeVos, is not a fan of public schools. So when our teachers did an incredibly brave thing, and that was literally recognized around the world, and was a spark that inspired so many people throughout the world, we drew a lot of attention to West Virginia. And my fear is that we also drew the attention of Betsy DeVos, who will look for an opportunity to do what she can to break our public education. And she's a fan of school vouchers, which I think would be a horrible, horrible thing for West Virginia. And I'm afraid right now we have a big target on our backs. So I think we need people in Washington who don't float along and vote only when it's easy and when it's going to pass anyway, but who go to the door of the White House and the door of the Department of Education and say, you need to help us and you cannot hurt us.
Yeah. So in closing this out, I like to ask people this question. What is your West Virginia superpower? And I ask it in a way, I think the folks at home kind of heard me go through this probably, but We are. We're at 50th on every list you want to be first on, and we're first on every list you want to be 50th on.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating. And so all we hear in our ear is you can't, you won't, you'll never, you're not good enough, all those things.
Right.
Based on the fact that when I grew up here, we've lived here, we are here, we're trying to grow a business here, do a job here, raise a family here, whatever it may be. But what I've found in my experience is when you can flip that around and be unapologetic and actually take some of those things, they've been huge advantages for me. Not just here and not just in the U.S., but globally.
Yeah.
And so I ask you, what is your West Virginia superpower?
Well, I love this question because not long after I won the primary, which by the way, a lot of people were really surprised by, I was the biggest money upset in the country.
Congrats, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. But I was outraised 10-1.
Wow.
And I won by 9 points. And pretty quickly after that, people started saying, "Well, that was it was great, it was a surprising win, really, well done." But she can't win in the general because she doesn't have enough money. And the sort of outside powers that be are not looking at this race as a viable race, and they didn't look at my primary race as a viable race, and I proved them wrong. So I put on Facebook not long after the primary that I wasn't getting help from outside from the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, because I'm actually not an old school, long time establishment candidate, so they're not going to be helping me. And I said, DCCC won't be helping, but it's okay. Being underestimated is my superpower.
Yeah, I love it.
And I think that that is West Virginians' superpower.
Yeah.
We are underestimated over and over again, despite all evidence to the contrary that despite deep poverty and real challenges geographically. I mean, it's not, you have to work to build your house here. You have to work your land here, and to get to work is not easy. But despite all the evidence that people work harder here than anywhere else in the country, they keep underestimating us. And look what happened with the work stoppage for the teachers. When they took that opportunity and seized that moment, all around the country, people started making signs saying, "Don't make us go West Virginia on you." That means something. Mm-hmm. They were underestimated. The teachers were told that they would not be successful, and they won, and they got what they needed. Not enough, not even close, because all they got was enough to pay for their rising healthcare costs, so that the work is not done. But as long as we're underestimated, we can continue to surprise people, but at some point, we're going to have to make sure that people know that they can't keep underestimating us.
Great. Kendra Fershee, running for the 1st Congressional District, thank you for coming on the program and good luck.
Thank you.